Good afternoon to the AYCDC directors and to the public that are attending today. I'm Joe Chan, one of the AYCDC directors, and before I call the meeting to order today, I'll note for the record that I will serve as acting chair for today's meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation for Tuesday, October 20th, 2015. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. Right, Joshua?
That's correct.
Great. And the directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we will welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. You'll note that the final item on our agenda is titled Public Comments. At that time, we will have an opportunity for the members of the public to provide comments on non-agenda related matters. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items in the agenda. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure. There has been no disclosure made. We will then be sure to recuse anyone who will make a disclosure. So I just want to note for the record that our first order of business is to approve the minutes, to review and approve the minutes from the March 23rd, 2015 and May 19th, 2015 board meeting. Can I have, or first of all, is there any questions, additions, or deletions to either set of minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
So,
A second?
second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. So now with the minutes approved, I'd like to call on Marion Phillips to provide us with his president's report. This item is being presented to you for your information only, and no vote will be required. Marion, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The report here today comprises of three pieces. There will be a project update on the site condemnation for Site 5, and then we'll have our community relations update regarding community meetings and our log, and then there will be a presentation by Forest City Greenland Partners of the project, where it currently stands in terms of the construction.
Yeah.
Related to the project construction, the buildings, and the rail yard. Up on the screen should be, there we go, is a map. If you look at the far west end of the project, western end of the project is Site 5. Site 5 is across the street, Flatbush and Atlantic. Site 5 is where Modell's and PC Richards are. We began condemnation of those two properties earlier this year. Condemnation on Modell's is for a ground lease. On PC Richards, it is for property. We started the condemnation. We began the process by having our attorneys reach out to both companies to do appraisals, at which point we'll start that process contacting the both companies. The proceedings will probably commence by the end of this year or early next year. What's currently in the GPP that the developer has a right to do is to build on Site 5 approximately 439,000 square feet of space of project, which could be anything from some commercial, office as well. That is what's currently the GPP permits for the project. We have had some discussions with Forest City Greenland Partners about other possibilities related to the project. At this point, nothing has been presented as a proposal, nothing has been approved. If there is a project proposal that is pushed forward or provided to ESD. There's an entire public process that must go through for any changes to be made to the GPP. At this time, we are just moving ahead with the combination of these two properties for the purpose of building what is currently provided in the GPP. If there are questions on that, I can answer those, and then I'll continue. Nicole will continue with community updates.
Do you know when the Modell's or PC Richards closes, if there'll be any efforts to try to re-employ those employees on other parts of the site?
So what will happen is once condemnation occurs, until Forest City is prepared to demolish and to build, they will continue operating. At this time, there's not been any discussion to your question related to, I would assume that both companies will make an attempt to keep their employees by leaving the businesses, but this time, that is not, conversation not occurring. And mine is my assumption, not anyone else's. So I'll ask Nicole Jordan to update us on the community relations, where we have been in terms of since the last meeting.
On September 16th and October 14th of this year, ESD and Greenland Forest City Partners held a community update meeting, formerly known as Quality of Life, at 55 Hanson, near the project site. The purpose of the meeting was to present the plan for B12, known as 615 Dean Street, discuss abatement and demo of B15, 664 Pacific Street, inform the community about upcoming Barclay Arena activities, inform the community of construction updates, give residents the opportunity to ask questions and voice concerns. A total of about 30 stakeholders attended both meetings, including representatives of elected officials, community boards, New York City agencies, and community organizations. In front of you is an overview and brief summary of topics addressed at both meetings. Topics discussed include, as you can see, changes to truck protocol, Site 5 condemnation, LIRR construction activities and West Porter work, green route, traffic, construction activity and updates for 550 Vanderbilt Avenue, which is B11, 535 Carlton Avenue, B14, 38 6th Avenue, B3, 461 Dean Street, B2, and 664 Pacific Street, which is B15. In addition to the topics listed in front of you, DOT Commissioner Keith Ray introduced Abigail Eichner as a new DOT representative for the AY project. From January 1st to October 14th, ESD has logged 117 incidents. 18 additional incidents have been received since the last AYCDC meeting. One incident is open, and an open status means that ESD or Greenland Forest City has not yet resolved the issue, but has the ability to. 3 incidents are pending, which means that ESD or Greenland Forest City do not have the ability to resolve the issue, and it is then, therefore, in the jurisdiction of an additional agency or an outside agency. Minus the above incidents, our response and resolve time is about 72 hours. ESD, Greenland Forest City Partners, and DOT responded to the concerns that were addressed and raised at the community meeting and informed the community that additional responses will be provided where needed. The AYCD director will provide you with an updated version of the incident log, and you'll be able to access it with your materials of today's meeting.
She hands me the mic, but I think if there are questions, she'll answer most of them.
Yeah, just one, or actually 2 questions, Nicole. Can you describe what the open issue is and what the 3 pending issues are?
Yes, the open issue refers to the noise mitigation issue. So there is a resident that would like windows, rear windows, so that is an issue that's pending. Once it's completed, then I will close it from the law. That's the issue. And Greenland Forest City is working with the resident.
Okay, so the open issue is related to windows and
Noise mitigation, and yes, and windows, and the windows.
that's being dealt with by Greenland and Forest City.
Yes, they've been in contact with the resident.
And then the 3 pending issues are?
The 3 pending issues are Long Island Railroad issues. So this is a trash issue and possibly a snow removal issue for the upcoming winter. So they are responsible to clear the property of the sidewalk adjacent to their property. So I need to make sure that when the snow comes up, that they're able to get out there and clear and shovel. And that's what 3 pending items are. They stem from that.
Okay, so all 3 are related to the LIR.
LIRR, yes.
Any other questions?
Can we just go back to the slide that showed some of the issues that the community members brought up at the meeting? I'm still sort of struggling when we say that something's resolved, if it's actually a reoccurring issue. And I don't know how we can sort of track what are the ones that are reoccurring and maybe not make it seem like they're resolved. It's sort of maybe are addressing that one particular issue, but that, I'm not sure if I'm wording this correctly, but I'm just sort of, there's some disconnect between the reoccurring nature of maybe some of those things and us saying that they're resolved. And I don't know how else we could address that to bring more clarity to the community about
I can
updates.
bring, I'll be glad to, if you have any questions on the incident report, any of those. But what I'll try to do is explain how this works. So anytime I receive an incident, I can get multiple concerns about the same incident at different times. I document those as different incidents.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happened today and the same thing happened yesterday, those are 2 different incidents. So it may be a recurring theme, but I document those as 2 different incidents because they were reported separately at 2 different times.
I think, Tamara, to your point, there are certain items that do reoccur, be it a bus, be it a truck, be it a gate, be it a tree, etc. And sometimes they occur and we make an attempt to address it and it's resolved at that moment, but it will come back. I think your suggestion is the best suggestion. Maybe we keep a running tally of things that are resolved as 1 or 2 that occur once or twice, and things that reoccur like buses or trucks, look at it as something we're addressing and how we address it in terms of do we speak to the appropriate agency and inform the community what that outcome is. And it may still occur, but at least the community would understand how we got to that point. An example would be trucks going down Dean. You know, that was something we did speak to the community about. And it may still occur, but they do understand how we got to that point working with DOT. In some instances, they may meet with DOT. I think we did have a meeting in the community. So I think that your point is well made, and maybe we'll separate them out like that. Because some of these will reoccur as construction continues.
Yeah, if I could just add something, and then I also have a question to Nicole. If you take Nicole's log starting from January, with the exception of the 18 additional ones that we haven't received yet, and you kind of go through from January to March and look at HDR's report and their weekly visits, you can see that issues of dust, noise, and traffic are these consistently reoccurring issues. And if you do go back, you can see that there are certain elements that are part of the project, mostly changes to the MPT, which result in traffic troubles. So I think that there is, outside of Nicole's log, which actually captures something very different from what you see in HDR's report, which I thought was beneficial, that, you know, where that coupled with maybe Atlantic Yards and our app, which I would hope to see, we can sort of start to create this kind of mix of all of these quality of life concerns. So I, definitely think that there is an opportunity to go back through these pieces that are being given and kind of piece together some intervention points. And I do think that a lot of it, again, reflecting on the HDR report, a lot of it has to do with having city agencies present at either at these meetings would be very helpful. I mean, NYPD was all over this report. DOT and changes to truck protocols. I mean, I was completely unaware of the truck protocol changes for Dean Street. So I think we just need to have some more information from city agencies and have them present here to answer some of those questions.
I know Sean had a question, but it's very difficult. DOT and NYPD do very well in terms of being responsive, and they do come to the community update meetings. It's very difficult for us to make that request for this since they're not state agencies.
Okay.
But they do come to the community update meetings and they're quite responsive, but we can make that request.
Yeah, well, I mean, does anything stop us from making that request?
No.
Okay. And I think we should definitely make it, and certainly, Jamie, if we could certainly could use your help in echoing that as the mayor's appointee.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
mayoral
I'd be happy to do
entities.
that.
But I think that's a good suggestion.
I was just going to add on to what Tamara said, that, you know, the idea of looking at trends, and if you're seeing it, as you noted, you're capturing it that way, you can see them and perhaps get ahead of them the next time. There are key items that drive them all the time. You know, how do we get out in front of it as best as possible? Just adding on.
And I think that's very fair. Again, as new buildings come online, and Jamie just highlighted the MPT is one of the first things that goes into play. We see those changes, and I think we can be more proactive as it relates to communicating. And we do, I think, we as well as the developers in our 2-week look ahead, as well as in just regular communication, we do a very good job of getting the word out. But again, if we can just get out a little further ahead, we agree, and we'll try that.
Marion, what is the report had mentioned changes to the MPT, and that's a topic that a lot of people seem to be concerned about. What is the protocol? There's an approved MPT approved by City DOT. What's the protocol for getting approved changes to that? And then once there are approved changes, what's the protocol for conveying that information to the community?
So and I'm going to take a simple crack at getting an MPT approved.
Right.
And then I'm going to ask Jane, you know more about getting an MPT approved than I will ever know. Once an MPT is approved by the city, I believe. Jane, would you just go ahead and take the question instead of me guessing?
So, excuse me. Good afternoon, nice to see everybody. So the MPT plans, which are maintenance and preservation of traffic, as you know, they are developed for each construction project. And they are plans that are supposed to balance the need for traffic to move, pedestrians to be moving, and everybody to be safe. And they look at what parts of a sidewalk or a street needs to be closed in order to allow for something to be built, and they decide where the construction fences need to be located, etc. So they're developed for each project and presented to DOT, the Office of Management of Construction, OCMC.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct, whatever. In any case, the OCMC is a division in DOT. They are in charge of coordinating any kinds of reviews in interdivisional reviews in DOT, but they issue the permits. So the MPT plans are approved by DOT. Once they are approved, or we know that DOT is on board in terms of what needs to happen or trying to balance things, that's the first thing. You wouldn't want to present a plan to anyone if you didn't know DOT had somehow understood it and blessed it in some way. So then we present it to the community so that we are sharing with the community timing of construction, how the MPT might work, and make some, answer questions. When they're changed, if they're in place, the way they can be changed can be a request by DOT. DOT may say, I don't like the way this is working. I think for the West Portal MPT, there were some adjustments that we did because of the crossing being very lengthy and dangerous on Atlantic Avenue. So they did some reconfiguring of the cross. They repainted the crosswalk and they redid some things. I'm not quite sure what they were. And they can come from the community as well. So if the community thinks there's an unsafe condition, I know that many people who have been involved in this project have had suggestions, and in the end, they have ended up being modified or implemented. But in any case, DOT has to approve it. They are the agency of jurisdiction, so it all ends up being funneled through them. The way the plans get modified is the engineers are required to modify the plans and the stipulations and submit them to DOT, and it's based on approval of those plans, the permits are issued. So that's sort of...
In the case of the change being initiated, contractor or the developer, the focus on?
Changes can be initiated by the contractors. The contractors can go to DOT and say, we are now moving from excavation and foundation to superstructure. There's a crane coming in. Cranes require special permits. That means the fence needs to move to accommodate the crane, except if you have a 16-foot fence which can't move and you've already located it so the crane can fit behind it.
But wouldn't that be covered in the original plan? All
Yes.
those phases would have
And
been
in the case of
anticipated.
Block 1129, it was.
Yeah.
which is why they're located where they are. In the case of something like B3, where there's, B3's 6th and Dean, they're 8-foot fences. They can move. Right now, the way those fences are configured, they will not allow a crane inside the fence. When we move to superstructure, there's going to be some sort of modification, or it's the loading dock. In any case, it's those kinds of things are things that the contractors would generate, but we would brief the community on.
So the community, I missed the last part, was how you would inform.
Once we understand what DOT's view is on it, we would then present it to the community.
So what happens is, we have a community update meeting, and that's when we introduce, thank you, Jane. That is when we introduce each MPT for each building or each project as it moves forward. Then that MPT presentation is sent out through in the 2-week look ahead as well. And it can be updated to the directors as well. Do we post it at all? We don't.
Yes.
And we do post it? Then we also post
Presentation,
it.
yeah. Whatever we present to the community is posted online.
So we will also post it on our website, the MPT.
Marion, before we go on to the construction activity and project update, any additional questions?
Yeah, I do have a few additional questions. The changes to truck protocol, can you explain that for the board?
The change to it? I'm not that much.
So there wasn't a change to, there was a change to protocol. So what happens is, the protocol gives the truck drivers the ability to go down to the truck routing, the DOT approved truck routing route as quick as possible. So Dean Street, for example, is what we currently use for B3. So B3, the trucks go straight down Dean Street, and that's the quickest way for them to go to the DOT approved truck routing site. So when that was changed, it was addressed, it was talked to with DOT to inform DOT that this is what is being considered, and DOT gave the okay.
And that was a change to the MPT, and that was posted on the website,
It
and
was not a change to the MPT. It was changed to truck protocols, which just gives the drivers the ability to leave the site as quickly as possible.
So the MPT is primarily for directly around each building, and the movement of people and transportation depends on what the flow of traffic is a better description. A truck protocol is bringing trucks in and out of the site.
And are they conveyed to the community also?
The truck protocols?
Yeah.
I believe so.
The protocols were added to the website.
They were added to our website?
And I did have one last question, and maybe this is Marion or Nicole or Jane. In HDR's report, there was a MPT approved closure of 6th Avenue. And if you sort of go back and you look at the kind of Nicole's log and then some incidents that were logged on the Atlantic Yards Watch site, you see that non-MTP approved closure actually resulted in some other problems associated with traffic.
Can you just highlight that and we'll answer it
Sure.
electronically with everyone for 2 reasons. One, I don't know that exact page of that
Yes.
report.
Yes, page 12.
And I think it'll be easier for us to address it
Yes.
without guessing.
Okay, happy to do that. It's just, I'm just wondering where in the process all of those updates happened and.
Right, but I don't know that specific one.
I have one question. So somewhere, and I missed the last one because of vacation, so I'm not sure
Don't brag.
which one it is. Sorry. I was originally supposed to be here, but we switched the date. But one of the concerns that got raised was how far in advance the community meetings are being set, so that there's enough time for the date to be set and the location to be set for there to sort of be full notification and for everybody to sort of orient their schedules
So
around it.
the question, the people behind you can't hear.
Oh,
The
sorry.
question that Marika asked is, can the community meetings notices be in advance so that people have an opportunity to schedule them, is the gist of the question. Generally, we try to schedule them out months in advance, and then what we've done is we've calendar them, and we calendar them based on how we calendar this meeting. What has happened is, as you know, things will change, things evolve, timing, and we just end up moving meetings, and we normally do about a 2-3 week notice. I'm good.
Any additional questions as it relates to Nicole's report? Just before we move on, I do think that Jamie's suggestion is a really good one, you know, not only for the next meeting, but on an ongoing basis, just because there understandably are kind of continuous questions as it relates to traffic and the MPT. It would be good to have someone from DOT, someone from PD. I think if we, as ESD staff, can send a request, CC the directors, and Jamie, maybe you could follow up on that. I think it's great that they come to the quality of life meetings, and you know, I know that this is another meeting, but it's also an important meeting, so it's a good request. As it relates to the Long Island Railroad, we have reached out to the LIRR at a staff level. Frankly, they have been a little bit slow to respond, so we're going to reach out to the MTA. Nicole has echoed back the concerns, and there seems to be kind of lack of understanding as to who's responsible for what, but we're going to follow up on that with the MTA. Is that fair, Nicole?
Yes.
All right.
So now we'll have Ashley do the presentation, the update of the project. Yeah, that'd be easier. Update of the entire project. I think, Ashley, the best way may be to break your report up into 2 parts, the buildings and then the West
Then
Portal.
stop, take questions, and then
Yes.
rail it? Okay, great.
That may work.
Okay, so hi everybody, thanks for having me again, Ashley Catton with Forest City Ratner. I'm gonna give, oh, is this cut? Thank you, appreciate it. So I'm gonna give you guys a development update.
Oh, it does.
Oh, I got there.
No, it does.
There we go. This is our agenda. This is what I'm gonna give you a development update on. Sorry, we're just making sure the technology works. So it's always helpful, first of all, to have the map to orient yourself for the buildings that we're gonna be talking about. Of course, I can't read that far. You know, I needed new glasses, but I do. And so obviously B2, 3, 15, 14, and 11 are the ones we're gonna be addressing today. First, I want to talk about the green roof. The installation of the green roof is not totally complete yet, thus the crane is still up. Unfortunately, I do not have a date by which the crane will be coming down. It's always noticed the 2-week look ahead, and given the very large operation to dismantle a crane, we'll do a community notice on any street closures required around it. The final work that's going on is related to the interstitial wall, which is my new favorite word, which is underneath the sedum. It's not work that we can see, and there are just final few complications they're working out with that, in addition to some final sedum trays, and so we are anxious to get that work done, and we'll keep you guys posted as the crane comes down. Next building. So this is 38 6th Avenue, formerly known as B3. As a reminder, this is an all-affordable building, and there's almost 300 units here. We broke ground in June of 2015 and anticipate opening in the second quarter of 2017. Currently, we're still doing site excavation work for the foundations, and therefore will not, we haven't started rising out of the ground above the fences yet, but work progresses smoothly there. Next building is 461 Dean Street, or B2, which is a 50-30-20 building. There are 363 units here. We were excited to announce this week that we're on the 22nd floor, which makes us the tallest modular building in North America, which is a great milestone for a building that obviously has had its setbacks, so we're really thrilled to meet that. Just as a reminder, this building is built with modular construction. In the Navy Yard, there are about 224 trade associates in a factory in the Brooklyn Navy Yard currently assembling the mods that are then driven and then lifted on the site next to the Barclays Center. This drawing is of an MPT, which is appropriate for the discussion we were having. This was described to the community last week, but the reason I'm sharing it with you here today is this is 664 Pacific Street. In other words, B15 and the future site of a 616-seat school that just went through the land use process for school siting, and we're really thrilled is moving forward. The reason I show it to you here today is not to talk about the building, but we are going to start the demolition of 3 residential and 1 commercial building at this site. And so I just share it with you today as part of our general development update. I won't go into all the details of the MPT, but that was what was described last week at the Quality of Life meeting, and always is before we start an MPT. Moving down the street, this is 550 Vanderbilt, the first condominium building in Pacific Park, which is about 300 condos. We're on either the 8th or 9th floor at this date. I will mention the sales center is open in the Barclays Center 7 days a week. If you're interested in seeing what these apartments are going to look like, that's at 179 Flatbush Avenue, sort of right next to the Net store. We broke ground on this building in December of 2014 and anticipate its opening in the first quarter of 2017. We're obviously in the superstructure phase of this project. And I would say, weather permitting, we're hoping to complete the superstructure and start facade by the end of this year. And finally, this is 535 Carlton Avenue, the 100% affordable building with almost 300 units that broke ground in December of 2014. The anticipated opening is the 4th quarter of 2016, and I'll note that the reason this building always looks like it's behind the other one on block 1129 is because we had to dig a 300-car parking garage beneath. So we're very pleased to finally be coming up out of the ground, and superstructure has begun. So before I turn to the rail yard, I'm happy to take questions on those buildings. Okay, great. So we'll move. Yeah.
Sorry. So this is maybe it's a little bit less on the construction side of things, but so I know that we're one of the. Sorry, I've got a voice that doesn't carry. One of the questions that has been raised is we know that there's a certain number of affordable units that are coming online on the front end. Has there been any numbers set or analysis on what the AMI levels are for those units, and whether or not where the lowest AMI numbers or lowest AMI units are going to be sort of in the sequencing of units coming online?
So the AMIs on all 3 buildings have been set and probably disclosed a long time ago. It's the last slide in my deck. So I can read it all to you, but then you're going to be like trying to take notes. I can just hand you this picture, frankly, but it's not a TBD by any means. It's been set for a long time.
We can resend that out.
Anyone else before we move to the rail yard? Okay. So we use this image to try to help remember. On the top image, you'll remember that the former Long Island Railroad yard is now where a basketball court and an ice rink are, and it's been moved to the far end of the site near Vanderbilt Avenue. I'll also point out on this image, it's just helpful to understand, we think of the rail yard as 3 big scopes of work: the west portal, the east portal, and then the permanent rail yard. And then we're actually, it's very exciting, at the point where we're now talking about foundations for the platform that will go over the rail yard, and the foundations for the future buildings. So if you think about all these different scopes of work, and this is what I said to the community last week, I guess I'll say it to you as well, that we're going to talk about end dates and start dates for rail work and the scope of work we're performing on behalf of the Long Island Railroad. But then we are moving on to platform work and then on to building work. And so, we're very focused, as you imagine, on the MPTs and when they're moving and getting bigger and skinnier and all this stuff. And so I paint that picture to remember that we may remove the west portal MPT, but then, and this isn't designed yet because we're still working on the platform, we're going to start talking about platform MPTs. So I paint the sort of broader picture, and again, not to be the bearer of bad news on long-term construction, but these rail yards are going to be a place for construction for these Long Island Railroad pieces, then platform, then future work, open space, et cetera. And so I only say that to, we're going to talk about scopes of work and timing, but just remember that when they're over, then we move on to the next thing, unfortunately. It doesn't mean that, a building opens when we're done with the rail yards. So that's the bigger drawing to help understand. So this Gantt chart is to try to help us understand those portions of work. The West Portal construction is to be finished by the end of 2017. You'll see the drainage and utility work, which in my future slides will become more clear. Obviously, to put all these additional buildings on, there is major infrastructure work going on in the street, sewage, electrical, and others. So we have that on here. The East Portal work, which I'll describe, really begins sort of as the West Portal work finishes, and that will be clearer in a moment. And then obviously the completion of the rail yard, you'll see, sorry, I misspoke before. I was trying to say the mid-2017 for West Portal, completion of the rail yard at the end of 2017. Okay, so let's try to make some of this clear. Again, sorry, I used this drawing for the MPT. These are drawings that we use in the community on a regular basis to show where construction fences sort of jut out into taking up either streets or sidewalks. Again, this is the state as it is today. That block just on Atlantic between, 6 Pacific, Carlton, and Atlantic and Pacific Street. I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself since I can't read it that far away. That is the subject for lots of construction into the future. So, again, I don't mean to be negative, but I just want to make sure people understand that when we're done with the West Portal work, we will move on with construction at the very same location. Okay, so let's talk about what the West Portal is. This is a critical piece of infrastructure work that we negotiated to do on behalf of the Long Island Railroad. It's a major element of the new and improved permanent Long Island Railroad yard that we've obviously been working on for years. So simply put, it's an extension of the Long Island Railroad tunnel under Atlantic Avenue that will provide a direct connection from Atlantic Terminal commuter station to the new yard itself. At this moment, the only connection at the far east of Vanderbilt Avenue, what we call the East Portal, requiring trains to run eastward all the way past Vanderbilt and back into the yard. This is inefficient and blocks train traffic in the main line, and this new connection will increase efficiency and provide redundancy in terms of accessing the yard and the tunnel. It will also allow trains to pass through the new rail yard and reconnect to the main line in the event of trouble in the tunnel. The West Portal is a major scope of work that launches the final construction stages of the rail yard. So we use this cartoon basically to help you understand what's happening in the West Portal, and we'll get to some photographs on site in a bit. But you can imagine there's train track and truly a new tunnel passing underneath Atlantic Avenue, whereas the bulk of the construction work we're doing is happening right now. But obviously in the streets, you see sewer, water, utilities. There is major utility work also going on at this time. So this is a photo just to try, none of us get down there, so to try to help you guys understand, this is 34 feet underneath Atlantic Avenue, the work that's going on right now. Okay, so moving to the other end of the rail yard, this photo is taken from standing on Vanderbilt Avenue, and the old structure that is from 1905 is on the right side, and that is the East Portal. So when the West Portal is complete and totally functioning, we'll then work on the East Portal. In this photo, you can see that this physical structure is the connection that serves out to the main rail yards to enter the storage yard here. 6 out of the total 7 storage tracks hold an 8-car train. However, you can clearly see on the far right side that one of the tracks can only hold a 6-car train because of this physical structure, the East Portal. So we are going to demolish it and pull it back. That will require an MPT around Atlantic and Vanderbilt Avenue. We do not have those plans at this time because it's still in the future. When we have them, obviously we'll come and present them to the community, and they're always noticed in the 2-week look ahead. All right, this is just another image to try to help us understand truly what's going in the yards. I was saying it's kind of exciting. We're actually doing footings for future work. So if you see that cement block on the left, the sort of whitish cement, that is an example of a footing. In this case, we're in the B5 future footprint, and the footings provide the support for both the future platform and the building itself. So again, when you think about us doing rail yard work, at the same time, we are doing future work that helps with platform and building foundations. That is additional scope that was added to our work because we realized there was no reason to go in, do rail yard work, then go back to do footing and platform work and rip up the work that's already been done. So that is an increased efficiency and added scope to what you would define as the complete Long Island Railroad work altogether. This is a picture looking up at, that's Newswalk on the right, that's obviously Pacific Street. Again, just to get in the rail yards a little bit to try to start understanding what we're really doing. This is obviously a retaining wall that's holding up the street. It's over 100 years old, and we had to demolish that old wall in order to do the improvements needed to create the permanent rail yard. So you'll see on the right side the new retaining wall going in, and on the left side the very old 100-year-old retaining wall. This is just a little bit closer up on the exact same thing. You'll see at the top of the photo that rebar, the green metal, that eventually will connect to future footings, again, a platform and buildings and open space eventually. And then one last image. This is something we get asked a lot, frankly, by the people passing on the street. Our construction team tells us all the time. These boxes look to some of us lay people as buildings. So someone says, oh, look, you're finally building the buildings in the rail yard. These are actually electrical substations that serve the rail yard. So again, as the part of the entire scope we had to do with the rail yard, they have electrical and other, mechanical work that they need in their rail yard, and so that's what those squares are. So those are all my pictures today. Again, we try to give you a little bit of flavor because from the street, it's hard to tell what's going on in there, and hopefully that might be helpful. Happy to questions.
Questions from board members regarding the rail yard portion of the presentation?
So I'm just going to slip to the next slide because these are the income bands that you were just asking about, and we're happy to make this available to you so you don't have to jot it all down. But two of the buildings are the same because they're both all affordable, and the other one's a 50, 30, 20.
I actually do have a question about some things. Thank you, Ashley. I don't have the documentation in front of me, but the timeline that you showed, there seems to be a significant extension of the construction period. Can you point out for us? I'm sorry if I missed it. There was just a lot of information.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, because I was just going back to the notes, and I remember a site tour that we did. The crane for the green roof was had actually come down. It's in the notes, so I'm confused as to the crane that is still in position. It's work related to the West Portal. Sorry if I'm messing all this up, but it just seems like there's a large kind of time frame difference now for the construction of the project. And can you just give us sort of a...
Yeah, so I think you're asking two questions at the same time. I'll try to pull them apart. It's okay. The crane has nothing to do with railroad work. It's just the green roof crane. Okay. It was a happenstance of efficiency that the green roof crane tucks behind the West Portal MPT. Again, construction fences is what I mean when I say MPT. Mm-hmm. So that green roof crane, which I'll talk about, when it comes down, unfortunately, we're going to gain back very little of Atlantic Avenue because it really is the construction site of, once we showed you that picture, they're under Atlantic Avenue, that helps us understand why you need those protections. Why is the green roof crane not down yet? The construction took longer than it is. I mentioned the last item that they're working through is this interstitial wall, which is not something that we can visibly see. In that photograph I showed, it's underneath the sedum. I pushed them to give me a date because I was in front of the community last week. I knew I was coming back here this week. If I had information about when it was coming down, I'd be happy to share it. Unfortunately, we're just going to have to notice it the way we notice other the other crane disassembly, which we've done before. As for the rail yard work,
specific.
I could jump in. I mean, again, I explained, so last week at the community, I got this question, so maybe I'll prompt the question, and that way.
Forgive me, because I didn't go to the community meeting.
No, I just wonder if that's what you're.
Inspired.
Giving-
I thought we were around 2016 for that completion of that work, and now it seems like 2017, if not
Right.
more, so.
So,
Ashley, just a minute.
Yeah.
I was reading the same thing Jamie's reading.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys
I believe there were two things. There were once was two cranes for the roof, one where B3 is that
oh,
correct?
yeah, that's.
So
long
that,
enough.
that crane came
Oh,
down,
right.
not the one on Flatbush.
Ah, okay.
So the note state here, a crane came down. I believe what those notes should have been specific to should have been the one on B3, which is on Dean and 6.
Yep. So there is a change in the completion date of the final permanent rail yard, and that is now December 2017, as I showed in that drawing. So again, I use the context of work going on after we're done, because sometimes you're asking the question because you're most focused on an MPT going away that's near your home or where you have to cross streets and stuff. Maybe that's not why you're asking, maybe you just want to know, but if you're focused on MPT, or for the people who are focused on MPT, I'll say that unfortunately these dates, the construction's going to continue after we're done with the permanent rail yards. I only say that to just give us some context. We made an arrangement after we signed with Greenland last June, and after we posted the completion guarantee to the MTA for all the work in the rail yard, to add scope to what we call our rail yard work. That refers specifically to what I was showing you in the picture. We are now doing foundation work for the platform and the future buildings while we're building the rail yard. Therefore, it's all work we'd have to do differently, but we're just doing it at the same time. It's all work we'd have to do eventually, because we have to build platforms, and so you have to build foundations for platforms. We're just doing it in a more efficient way, where we're doing it at the same time so that we don't have to rip up work that's already in there. And that is why the scope is more, therefore it's longer. But again, it's all work we'd have to do anyway, so it's not like, I wouldn't call it a delay, because it's all work that's going to happen anyway in order to finish the platform eventually. I hope that's a clear explanation. So there was a date change from when we said the completion of the permanent rail yard, and to what you are seeing here today. That was negotiated with the state and the MTA. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, can we also, in addition to getting this sheet, can we also get this sheet with the projected numbers for over the entire life of the project? Right, because I guess my question is, there's a set of units that are coming online at a 30%, 40% AMI band, or at a 40 or 60% AMI band. What share of the total number of units that are projected in those bands are coming online now, as opposed to what percentage of them are coming online later?
Sure.
Right? Can we do that?
Anybody else? Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Marion, anything else in terms of the President's report?
No, the report's completed.
Thank you, and thank you again to Nicole. We appreciate those updates, and thank the members of the public for listening to the President's report and agenda-related comments. Now I'd like to lead us into the portion of the meeting that I referenced at the beginning, called our public comments portion. I understand that we have with us today some attendees who want to share comments that don't necessarily address items on today's agenda. At this time, we would like those individuals to share their comments. Generally, I would ask that you would try to limit your comments to 2 minutes. I would also ask that this is not intended to be a question and answer session, but rather a comment session. It is, however, an opportunity for those who wish to make comments to do so. With that being said, I'd like to ask Nicole Jordan to call upon the individuals who've signed up to make comments. Nicole will also keep track of the time so that we can stay on schedule. And Nicole, I guess I will turn it over to you to call off those who have signed up for comment.
First speaker is Peter Crashes, representing Dean Street Block Association.
Hi, I'm going to be very brief. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I wanted just to touch upon a few of the things that have been covered here. First, in terms of the community meetings and the community update meetings, I think speaking certainly on behalf of everyone who's been attending these meetings and trying to attend these meetings, I think that the publicity for the meetings doesn't make sense. I think you want to, typically a good public meeting, you give 10 days notice, you send out a reminder 10 days before the meeting, and then you send out one closer to it. We've, on Dean Street, held a lot of meetings, a monthly meeting every, since 2004, so we get people to turn up, so we can advise you guys on how to do it, if you're interested in getting that input. In terms of the meetings themselves, the idea, I think, of these meetings when community members attend is to actually express concerns, have them logged in, have those concerns brought into a set of a process that's going to be effective. And I think that we have, for a long time, not had minutes to these meetings, haven't had recordings allowed at the meetings. And if you're assuming that the issues that are addressed are brought into the log, right, we don't have any reason to assume that at all, to be honest, because in a lot of cases, the same issues are brought forward. Only last week, I was walking through the project footprint with Department of Transportation and the Parks Department, looking at street trees that I've raised as an issue for the protection over and over. I want to also just underline again what I said at the last meeting in terms of the changes to the project, which, for example, the east and west portals and the building of the buildings on the arena block, which were originally considered to be complete by the time of the arena opening, and are now, and then as well as actually, I think, the rail yard construction. And that is now overlapping with the construction that's taking place now. And I think that causes extra burden for the community. And finally, I just want to address, and I think just to the point of the timing of some of the responses, I think that I referred to the street trees before as being something that should have taken place, actually the protection of the street trees at the time of the implementation of the construction fence near those trees, which was a year ago. We're still dealing with it. We heard a reference to the open issue of the rear windows with a resident waiting for rear windows. I think it'd be interesting to hear how long that process has been taking place. I think that we have, over and over a sense. And I raised this at the last meeting, for example, in terms of but in terms of the notice for construction noise mitigations, where did that bog down? What entity didn't have a procedure in place in a timely way, and what was the penalty for that failure? I think we need to actually, look beyond the kind of response, the numbers of response, and look at the quality of response, and start assessing where there are problems and fixing them. If there isn't an incentive for the ESDC to fix the problems that exist, then we're never, it's it's a waste of time for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Dwight Smith, representing Community Board 2.
I have a much simpler process question. I understand that a list of issues and observations were identified during the walkthrough in July 17th, a process I didn't get to go through. I wonder if that list is going to be distributed, which is something we'd like to have specifically Community Board 2.
Okay, that sounds like a request. Again,
I'm not sure if that was in order, because it wasn't exactly a statement, but it is a sort of a statement of a request.
Understood. It's request to share information, and I think that's something that we can take back.
Thank you.
There are no more speakers.
No additional comments? Jim, did you?
I just very briefly, I wanted to just with the subject of the work going on in the west portal and the rest of that construction, just wanted to draw the board members' attention to the idea that the Atlantic Avenue roadbed between Flatbush and really, even east of 6th Avenue will have to be rebuilt when that work is done, and it would be very much an opportunity to make the street safer, to make it a more pedestrian-friendly environment. And I don't know if providing that type of input falls in the scope of AYCDC, but I certainly would encourage the board members to take an interest in the reconstruction of that part of Atlantic Avenue.
Thank you, Gibb. Any additional comments from the public? Okay, there being no further comments, I want to thank the directors for attending today, as well as the public who's here. And with no further business, I will call for.
I'm sorry,
Jenny.
Is there an opportunity for directors to raise something that is not on the agenda?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And let me just say this before you do. Please do not take our not responding to each of these, so saying this to the public, each of these comments or suggestions as indifference. We are going to take everything back and get back to everyone as to what we can respond on. Just as a matter of protocol, during our meetings here, during our ASD meetings, we don't enter into, back and forth question and answer sessions. So, the commitment to follow up on each of these items, some of the answers you'll like, some of them you may not like, but what we're not doing is ignoring those comments. We're taking them in as part of the process. Sorry, Jane.
No, thank you, Joe.
Can I ask a question, sir, for you as a part of that? Is there a way for us to include in each month's agenda the questions, the public comments from the last time that do have answers, so that people get the answers on record?
I think that's a great suggestion, and
I think they're in the minutes,
Yeah, but I
and
mean,
then they're also posted. We look at the questions, we did post them, didn't we? Yeah, for the March meeting, we did post the comments on the website.
okay, but I think what's also being requested is not only echoing of the comments, but ESD staff's response.
No, we did respond on the website.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Thanks, Sam. A couple of months ago, weeks ago, we received the HDR first quarter report, so the environmental monitoring report. Is there someone from HDR here? Is there an opportunity to follow up or ask questions on the report and some of its contents?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. I'd like to ask if perhaps at the next meeting, someone could be present. I know I'm very happy to follow up through email with you guys. I always get great responses, but I feel like what's becoming very apparent to me at this meeting is that this is the first time, or this is the only time, where board members are getting sort of this communication with community members. And I see a few things that are kind of I'm not abreast of, because they happened at the quality of life meetings.
Yeah, and in the vein of, just to respond to that, of your request to have DOT and PD attend the next meeting, I think the HDR request is a good one. Certainly Marion, we can try to answer what questions we can, and also be transparent on which ones we can.
Right, sure.
I can answer the HDR one, because I can answer that. Yes, we'll get them. That's the best I can do on that report.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I know I've combed through it, as you can see, and I have some specific questions. So perhaps they're not best asked here, but I guess just to go on the record for the meeting minutes, I have some questions about this report. It encompasses site visits and observations from January to March. It was written in August. We received it in October. I have some questions about sort of the process for which this document is created, sort of the steps that it goes through. I have requested from Toby that the appendices that go along with this document are posted on the website. I know it's a a big lift, Toby, but it'd be great if we could have them, thank you. And there are just some other things here. I mean, one of the things that jumped out to me in particular was there were some concerns about truck staging. And there's an observation here that says that ESD had requested for a city to evaluate possible improvements for staging protocols. I know that this is a concern that we have heard from community members. So, this is important information here that I feel like we need to discuss perhaps with HDR. Thank you.
I guess the other thing that, since at the council's rep, one of the things that I hear via city council members is concerns about the community meeting, the outreach process, how things are being set up. So if we could get some clarity on how those community meetings are, I know it's a lot of schedules to juggle, a lot of people, you guys make a lot of effort to make sure that all of the different parties that need to be there to answer those questions are there, but if we could get some understanding of sort of the protocol for both how the meetings are being set up and then how they unfold. I know many of us have tried to sort of as board members, not necessarily we can't all be there at the community meeting, that doesn't work for quorum, but B, also to let that be a space for the community members to really be there and run, and not necessarily for us to be there and to be front and center. But I think we want a better understanding both of how they set up and then the role for community voices to come out and to be followed up in those.
So what happens is earlier this year, and we'll do it again at the latter part of this year, or the end part of this year, we will try to calendar 2016. And we will calendar the AYCDC meetings first, and with the intent of having a community meeting right prior to. The community meeting would occur every other month, whereas the AYCDC could occur every quarter. This year in 2000, so that's how we are going to schedule them going forward. As it relates to how the meeting operates, we really take the opportunity to, because the project has now begun in earnest, we take the opportunity to update the community on all of the things that are occurring that they have not heard most recently. That does not include what's in the 2-week look ahead, but really from the last 25 to 45 days. Giving them the opportunity to respond, and in some cases, some of what we're telling them, be it from the developer, from DOT, NYPD, from ESD, some of it is what's happening, some of it's what's going to happen. Items like building design, open space, those items come before them for comment, and those comments are brought before you. Some of the basic, they're at floor 22 of the B2 building, is a factual statement that doesn't require comment. But if it has a direct effect upon the community, we make every attempt to come out in advance to receive comment, so the developer, if they can, make the adjustments. But again, some of it's factual. They're at stack 22. So that's how the meeting is unfolding right now.
And I appreciate that. I think that I understand how it's working. I think some of the concerns are making sure that it's equally as balanced a space for updates from you all to the community, which people are asking for. I know that's sort of one of the reasons we have all of those different people at those meetings, but also an equally a space for the community to update you all and vis-a-vis us, the board, of issues that they're having, because as great as these logs are, because they're very extensive, right, not everybody is going to voice their concerns in that way, and so I just want to make sure that we are given that space in those meetings and for things to come up that aren't on the agenda or that weren't on the updates or, right, so that.
And I think what has happened, the community has made requests of ESD, the developer, NYPD, and there have been multiple tours, not only the ones that we've established, set up for the directors, but additional tours where we've participated, some we've not. So to the point, I believe we've done a better job of really working and hearing the community. It doesn't mean we can't do a better job. So I think it's not just the update meeting, but it's those ad hoc tours that also make up that process. And I think those things are continuing and will continue.
Is that, clear, are you saying that, in the setup of the meetings, there's not enough time for community comment, and that either, my pet peeve, of course, is always at council hearings, that the public go first before staffers, who have to, it's their job, but, we always leave the public to last, and then, we're running out, and it's 20 more minutes, and people get cut off. So would your suggestion, my suggestion, would be that the public gets to comment first and get all of that out, and then the updates begin, because some of the updates might answer some of those, instead of leaving the community comments, to the end of everyone's presentation.
May I answer this? I know it's your question, but I'd like to answer it. May I ask, maybe.
We're together on this.
So may I answer that one question? May I ask, like, the three of you, Jamie, Bertha, Rika, maybe to attend the next community quality of life meeting, community update meeting, to see how it interacts, because it's very free flowing. And maybe you can give us input that way, opposed to having this conversation where you're getting it secondhand and I'm answering it firsthand. And maybe we can get a better input on how it works for you.
I am happy to do that, Marion, but I
can't get more than three of you present.
Yeah, but I'm also concerned that there is a lot happening in those meetings, and that is not being communicated to this body.
Yes.
This is a working session, and you're asking us to look at this information and recall all these documents and make a decision just like that, and it's hard. So I feel like it's a few things. I'd love to attend the meetings. If I can, I will. I think community needs to know further in advance of when the meeting is,
Yeah.
such as Mr. Crash's recommendation. I think we need a stronger outreach than we currently have. And then I think maybe there's something in the process, and I don't know the answer, but I'm happy to sit and observe and listen to perhaps community members for how they feel.
Yeah.
The meeting
You
should
can
go.
always, if it's every other month, you can always sort of switch it and reverse it, have where people just yah, and you have talking heads do the presentation, and then the following one is just the community without anyone doing presentations. Now, I'm on the ZBA, so we have one of our members who attends each one of these quality of life meetings, and so I'll come.
I mean, if you have a
But-
representative, I'm fine.
Yeah, but it's, Marika's point is correct. There is not, it may seem to be free flowing, but there needs to be some more improvement of the community interaction. But
I'd love to work with you on it.
And I echo Jamie's.
I'd love to work with you on it.
I will also try to be there. But I think the concern is, I know that we're sort of anchoring scheduling around when the AYCDC meetings are, but when our meetings get shifted, then their meetings potentially get shifted, which then oftentimes sort of flows out in a way where people don't know, they're finding out 5 or 10 days ahead of schedule, right? That's just
Or
very
in this
difficult.
instance, we had two community meetings before this meeting. So yeah.
Well, can I make a suggestion, and I apologize if this hasn't been made yet, but, obviously this has come up from a couple board members and from the public as well. Why couldn't we commit to a bare minimum in terms of public notice? Like, we will at least give whatever it is, 14, 21, 28 days notice, and just say, this is going to be our commitment moving forward.
We can. The problem is, we can.
Yeah.
The problem is, we can. We'll just, because the goal has always been to lead from the community meeting into this meeting, but I think we can still do that, and so we can.
I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
Correct.
And I think with juggling both the schedules of who we need at quality of life, and then when we get to the board, it becomes down to quorum issues too, which might force a reschedule. I think we should aim to try to piggyback them. However, I think it's fair to say to the public, we won't request it, or we won't notice a quality of life meeting or a public meeting or community meeting less than X days.
Okay.
I think that's a fair request to make, and, you know, I think it's one that we should be able to deliver on.
Okay.
Okay, and then I think, you know, in terms of the request that we maybe consider another format, I think, you know, certainly if we can speak with the individual board members offline and come up with ideas, it's, you know, as you have offered. And, you know, I know the other request that's come from the public, but, you know, also been raised by the board members is how we report back on specific items that come up. And besides the log that's handed out, Nicole or Marion, can you just say, like, how do we report back to the board if it's not, you know, a specific incident? How do we communicate back, and how do we give the board assurances that they're hearing what was raised at the meeting?
So part of, we did this 2 meetings ago, and Nicole reminded me of this yesterday. 2 meetings ago, she gave a very detailed highlight of maybe the 20 or 30 comments that came out. Last meeting, we just gave the highlights. This meeting, we just gave the highlights. So to answer the question, in the past, we can go back to it. Nicole can give much detailed report of what occurred at the meeting. And that's what she did 2 meetings ago.
So instead of going through Nicole for this, why can't we just get the transcripts or the minutes of what occurred, and it's part of the package? Is someone,
it's not
recording this, like we have this recorder here? Wouldn't it be better if you could just get actually what was said as opposed to someone?
We don't transcript that meeting. We don't record that meeting at all, for 2 reasons. One, it's not a state meeting, it's really a developer meeting, and the state is a partner in that. So we do not use set minutes for the meetings. So, I mean, the developer wouldn't have any.
Yeah, I'm not gonna volunteer to do that, so.
Well, because that would solve a lot of problems for this basic issue that she's raising, because when we have this package, it's in there, this was the transcript or the minutes of that meeting. And then you have it, you actually have documentation that way. You know, this thing of recurring, people saying the same thing over and over, and the problem actually has been solved, but folks don't want to really admit that it's been solved. It's just, you know, we can, but
I would support
Jamie and I will work, you know, with you on that, just so we don't keep having this same issue over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a reasonable request to have some sort of summary as to what was requested, or what the comments were and what was requested. I know that for this meeting, one of the reasons why we're not, you know, putting before the directors for approval the minutes from the July meeting, just to give you an idea in terms of the logistics, is I think it was something like 200 pages of transcript. This is just from our last board meeting. So if there's a simpler way to do it that we can be somewhat assured is an honest portrayal of what came up at the meeting and that people feel good about, I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, maybe there's just a bullet point summary of the specific requests.
Let us try at the next meeting to come up with some type of a summary and work from there.
Okay.
So one question, when will the next quarterly report, when do you anticipate it to be available? The one for the period ending June?
Didn't we just get that?
January, March?
Yeah. Linda, we'll reach out. We'll speak to you about. I think it's near, but I don't know.
One more question.
Yeah.
update on the app? Can the board get an update on the app?
Yes. We can. No, it's one of those times in life where you just gotta just admit, we just dropped the ball over the summer,
Okay.
and that's your update.
Do you have an RFP that we can review? That
We
was
dropped the
last
ball
meeting?
over the summer. I can't say it more than twice, please. We will have the RFP by the end of the middle of the next month to review by you and the other directors, and so we can go forward. That's what we committed to. Again, just drop the ball over the summer.
Other questions from the directors, comments before we close?
You have to middle of November.
I know that there are additional comments or questions from the public. I think I would commit to ESD staff, addressing those questions after the meeting is closed. Again, we're trying to keep discipline here. We did have a public comment period, and we can't really have an extension to that comment period after we close the comment period. So staff is here to answer any questions, but hearing no further questions from the directors, can we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Director Lewis. A second? All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned, and again, ESD staff, please stay at the table and answer Peter and I know Norman.